Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Kia ora koutou everybody, welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. Very excited, firstly because we have Tane back joining us after being a really busy person over the last few months. Tane, how are you going and what's been happening in your world?
Yeah, I'm going really well, thanks. It's been a busy couple of months, but I guess also been cool to reflect on the other side of the podcast, to be able to listen to a few of the episodes that you've recorded and see the other side of other side of the story. I think my biggest thing that I've been learning the last couple of months has just been that time doesn't stop, and that sounds, I guess, a bit cheesy, but just the reality that, you can dwell on things, you can keep grinding on things, but eventually time doesn't stop for anyone, and you've just got to make the most of those opportunities that come your way and have those hard conversations with yourself sometimes about just taking on those opportunities, taking on those challenges, and just carrying on.
Yeah, and that's so true. A lot of us forget about the fact that time keeps on moving. It's a man-made construct, but it keeps on moving whether we like it or not. I love it. And what I put into my basket of knowledge since we last recorded a podcast was I have this philosophy that I like to talk about in my coaching or in my world of training, and it's all about identity. And over this last week, we did a workshop in Auckland, and one of the things I spoke about was identity and how identity is not formed but it's absorbed. So that the fact that we all think that we have control of identity, but if we think about it, it's actually absorbed by people around us, from the things we hear, the things we say, the culture that we have. And my question to the group, and also a realization for me, is how many of us are actually living the identity that we really want versus living the identity that has been forced on, absorbed on us. And it just ties back into your concept of time, because sometimes we spend a lot of our life or a lot of our time living someone else's life as opposed to the life that we want. So that's my little learning. I got a bit deep very quickly there, but hey, it's not about me and Tane, it's about our guest. So like I said at the start, excited for two reasons. Number one, having Tane back, and number two, our guest. Our guest is someone that Tane introduced me a few months ago, and Tane connected with them in a leadership program. It is someone that when I did a bit of research, I'm really excited to share their story and for them to use their words. It is 6 a.m. here in New Zealand. It is 7 p.m. on a Friday night for them where they're from. And we are very excited, very privileged, and very honored to welcome to Pastors Knowledge, Adrian. Adrian, welcome to Pastors Knowledge.
Thank you. No, it's great to be here. Great to share some things and move forward. I think it's quite interesting what you both talked about, how what you're looking at and moving forward. And certainly in terms of identity, I do agree. You kind of grow it with the people around you, and sometimes you kind of have to put masks on around different people to potentially help yourself and others. So it's quite an interesting thing. And as well for Tani, when he said he's taken kind of a different look and a perspective, obviously, of this podcast, having been away for a while. Again, I think that's something really good to show, because it shows you're willing to step outside what you've created and actually, let's see how that looks from a different perspective. And I think that's really cool, because for me, that is like watching yourself on a video. You never get a chance to actually see that very often. But when you do, it is actually quite powerful. And you don't actually realise some things you're not doing and you are doing. It's a very interesting concept of moving forward and understanding yourself and the people around you, because you do capture different body languages as well. Because for me, when I was doing my level 3, for example, for rugby coaching, sessions were filmed, but the big focus for me was actually looking around at the players and myself. I knew what I was doing, but let's see how the players reacted to it. And that's probably the biggest kind of takeaway I've just taken from that little chat there. It's always about the other person more in those kind of situations, but you need to be aware of yourself as well. So it's quite an interesting subject to think about there, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and I love how you brought that up. Adrian, because if you think about it, sometimes we get so caught up with what's in front of us, and like you said, and like Tana has done, when you zoom out, you actually realize that it's not just you in the world. There's a whole world around you, and everything's reacting to you, or not you as well.
I think for me, what has been lucky is I've travelled the world. I've seen lots of different cultures, and I don't know, I can't remember. I know it's over 20 countries I've been to now. I lived on the island of Malta for 4 years. Lived in Brazil for 4 years. Um, Worked in New Zealand for a bit with rugby. Um, Australia with family up there. One of my cousins played in the NRL years ago, and just seeing all these different aspects and having been to Asia, I think the only continent I haven't been to is Africa. But what has been lucky for me as quite a young person visiting a lot of those countries until I finally came back to the UK after the Rio 2016 Olympics, because I was there for a project with a number of different companies. It gave me an insight into actually what is real life. What have we got in front of us? Who is around us? And where are we going? And it became very, for me, coming back to UK, which is just a small island, everyone's kind of on top of each other, where out there in Brazil, you're spending maybe 3 hours on a bus to get to the next town, or the town has just been built around a factory where everybody works, if that makes sense, and there's a school, blah, blah, blah. It's such a different way of looking at things. I'm just glad I got a chance to do that and meet those different cultures and be embedded them. Like, I've seen people in favelas. I've been shot at in favelas in Brazil and things like that. It's a completely experience that you're never going to get in your life. And then you come back to the UK, which is a very, some people say like prim, proper and all that kind of things. It just shows you what life is worth. Because sometimes a lot of what I have seen around the world in poorer situations is difficult. It's difficult. And that's why I think a lot of people need to realise there's a lot more going on than just yourself. But you need to learn about yourself before you project that kind of thing out into the world, so that you're projecting the right positive kind of like thinks and thoughts and stuff. Because it wasn't easy to speak to these kids in favelas and stuff. I had to find a way and adapt myself to them and things, because they're used to a lot of different things. But if I'd adapted the wrong way, might not have gone the right way. But I adapted the right way, and we got some great, fantastic work from it. So it's a very interesting way to view the world, if I'm honest, with knowledge. And I'd say to anyone, travel. But for Brazil, Rio, for example, during 2016 was quite a dangerous place after the Olympics, but we carried on working. The violence kind of behind it all was normal by that stage. It's a place to visit. It's a place to get to know, but just watch yourself. When I say that to anyone in any country, it's not pass along. I think the biggest learning thing I kind of realised recently, because we've just been back for the first time, well, me, it's the first time in 10 years with my wife, is I realised, like, hang on, why when we go to places like Sao Paulo, where we landed, we're always checking for our wallets and cameras are looking out, or Paris, for example, we're looking out for all our wallets and things. But when I go to London, I just put my phone, my wallet and my keys in my pocket, and I don't even think about anyone trying to steal them. It's a really interesting way to look at it, because whatever's going on in London is definitely going to be the same as Paris or the same as Sao Paulo. There's going to be pickpockets. There's going to be people trying to steal off you. There's going to be people trying to do things. And it made me realise, hang on, I'm doing things that actually, I'd go to another country, because we went to Rome last year. I was keeping an eye. We had all these zip bags on because they said about the pickpockets. And then literally coming back, I went up into London for a reason. I thought, I haven't even bothered to check if my wallet's okay or it's in a safe place on my phone or anything. I'm just off into London. So it's an interesting way to see how culture changes you after you've been somewhere like Brazil. And then you go to other places and your mindset goes back to that kind of English thing. But then you think about, hang on, why am I doing this here when I'm being told to do it somewhere else? So it kind of changes you. That, as you were saying at the beginning, I think this culture, this thinking of people changes you. You go to these locations, and that location changes you into a different mindset to fit that culture. But actually, that culture exists where you are anyway. And I think that maybe is quite a good way, as we were saying at the beginning. Sometimes we need to look outside before we can actually move forward. And it was quite a powerful thing that I realised in my head recently to think, why am I not doing that at home when London is probably just as dangerous or Rome as Paris or anything like that? So it was an interesting thought. I don't know about what you guys think, but
Yeah, I love that. I think that's, it's all about perspective. And at the start I spoke about identity, and this is a clear example of how we absorb the identity that we're in, and then we just shift back to our normality when we're in places that we're comfortable, or we're comfortable in, versus places that we perceive that is not comfortable. And it's a thought I've always thought about. We all live in the same world. We all have the same problems, but the level of problems changes, and our reaction to them changes as well. But Adrian, before we go even deeper, people who know nothing about you, who is Adrian today on the 2nd of May 2026?
well, turning 40 this year. I'm not going bald, by the way. I do tend to shave my head just to give you a bit easier. At the moment, kind of just looking into a different style of work for my own reasons. Things are slowing down. I'm looking more into a different direction for myself and kind of looking for a new change. If I'm honest, I've got to a stage in my life with rugby and things where, well, I've done the younger things, I've done the coaching. Maybe it's time to pass on that 20 plus years of knowledge and move forward. And a big passion of mine is actually being able to educate people around the basic life skills and things like that, but as well as rugby as my main sport, heavily around life skills, mental health skills. How do we work with each other as athletes? Because it's very easy to go, yeah, I'm all right. But as we've known and seen around the world with the rise of mental health and the world changing and a lot more charities jumping into it, it's now becoming a kind of complete movement going forward. And I have to adapt to that as well. I have put my own mental health story out there. You can just search it, just put Adrian Sylvester rugby, and you'll find it. And I was happy to do that because if one person reads it and it helps someone, it does. That's the best of it. So for me now, like moving forwards, especially turning 40, it's about now passing on those skills, on that knowledge that I've learned. I've been in some quite dangerous situations, I've been in some really good situations, and I think it's just now understanding, right, which way am I going to go? I've got kind of three looks I'm looking at. Is potentially going into teaching, helping others with similar problems that I've had before, to help them get back into work and things from that. And the third one is working within sort of like with mindsets and stuff, and moving forward as a rugby coaching college kind of work, but looking at leadership, looking at what are we doing outside of the box and things. It's not just an easy life. You're moving on to college, you're moving on to university. No, there's a lot more out there for you. So for me, it's a time of change. It's a big time of change. I'm just trying to figure out where I'm going with myself and what I should aim to go for myself. And the biggest thing for me at the moment is I'm not actually asking myself, I'm asking people around me because I want to know what they think. So I've applied for a few jobs, mainly just for the feedback, because I want to see what they are saying and what am I providing? Is it good enough for what potential I'm looking for? So I can build a balance to see, right, this is the role I'm going to go for. But as we know, each role is different. So I'm building CVs after CVs and covering letters and things like that to challenge myself to achieve the goal. And I think that's, as I said, like I'm in a moment of change, but I've still got a goal to get to. And I've still got 3 ways I want to go about it, but I need to test those ways. So my mindset is basically focused on, right, these are the jobs I want to look at. This is where I am with my mindset. Let's apply for these jobs. Who knows? I might get an interview. I might not. But if I can get some feedback from it, that will just make me stronger for the next one. That'll make me understand better this way. I've asked to do some voluntary work, for example, to find out things. So for me, it's at this moment in time, it's change, but moving forward as well to a positive point, but using the people around me to help me and move from there.
I love that because it challenges the whole messaging around failure, and there's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback. As you said before, with every application you put out there, it doesn't matter whether you're successful or not. It's how you take that and use that as feedback for yourself on how to improve, how to change, and how to grow. But Adrian, I'm curious. Would you be able to share some of your mental health story? Just for our listeners who may not have time to search your mental health story and what you went through.
But it's just the kind of life where things didn't go right at certain times in my life, and it just led to a pathway which has led me to now, where I'm discussing with my GP is I have a very strong personality. So I was speaking in Portuguese, and my person of who I am is I'm all about everything being just and within the limits of people, if that makes sense. And it's put me into a kind of mode where if I think something's wrong, then no, that's not fair. It needs to be the correct way. And that kind of journey through the years, to be honest, I'm not going to talk about that because it's something that I've learned. No, I'm moving forward now. I'm not looking at the past anymore. But what it's created me into is someone strong, but there to help people in those situations if it's needed. I've jumped in several times when situations have needed it, and I've managed to calm people down because of what happened to me in the past. I've known how to adapt to the situation and bring them down to that lower, right, where are we going? Let's make this situation thing. Let's see what we're doing. Let's look at the surrounding. Let's look at how you are, and let's how we go forward with this. It's my mental health journey is out there, but for me, that's now for other people. For me now, it's moving on from that. It's getting better from that. Yes, things pop up here, there, and everywhere, but I like to use it as a tool and moving forward to prove to others that if I can get through it, you can get through it. All you got to say is, yeah, it's okay to talk. And I don't know why people are scared of it, because it's the first time I'll be honest, the first time I ever said it was, I was working for Harlequins. We'd just been pandemic. Everyone was in panic. I got a phone call from, it was just after an accident I'd had. I had a phone call from HR just to see how I was. And I kind of asked, how's everyone else? I said, well, everyone's in the same situation. It's a bit the unknown. And I said, well, why don't I explain, write down my history around mental health, just to help out other people, give them ideas, maybe let them know they're not alone, and just give them some ideas of how we're going to push forward. And I thought, well, why not, if that makes sense? And I called it to... if I remember rightly, sorry, I've probably got the title wrong anyway, relearning how to ride a bike, or you never forget how to ride a bike. And I kind of did 4 chapters with them because the HR were on board with it. And I got massive praise for the first chapter. It was, everyone got back to me and said, thank you for that. It's so brave of you to say that. Thank you for the knowledge and stuff. And I just did 4 different chapters explaining different things that they could do, what had happened to me, and push forward. And just to show that, yeah, we're in a pandemic, but the end of the day, it's yes, you're stuck in your house, but we're all worried, but you can only do so much. So let's stay grounded. Let do what you do normally in the house. TV's still on. Watch DVDs, play games, talk to your friends. And eventually, what it all became, people talking to each other more on Zoom. It became more people talking to each other, and then that story kind of went out there with a few more people. They asked me the permission and stuff to take it, and I said yes. And I just thought it's important to people know that it's easy to talk, but it's also hard to talk. But by reading whatever I've said out to them, they know that someone who's in rugby that everyone sees as rough, tough, and everything. If I can say something, well, the world can too. And I think that's very important for people to understand that with mental health is you could be struggling now, you could be struggling before, but move forward, open your mouth, get there. There has been some bad times that I won't talk about here, where unfortunately a couple of people have done things and they never were able to help themselves. But that's the thing, you can't look back on that. As I said to someone recently who lost a friend through that kind of situation, I said, do not hate yourself. Do not think that you could have done something. Do not think that you could have changed it or anything or any kind of situation. The end of the day, what happened, and we've just now got to move forward. You can feel things, you can look at it, but just don't blame yourself. And I think that's a lot of people need to realise that before with mental health is do not blame yourself. You're in a situation because of a reason somewhere. Could be from when you were young or not. I'm not saying that. There's so many reasons out there that I couldn't say. But stop and talk to people. I think that's the biggest thing you need to take from that is talk to people before it gets too far. Because you don't want to find yourself alone one day. And the people around you as well. You need to be there. You need to find that coverage. And I think that's probably the best way to explain it, if I'm honest, in the kind of way.
Thank you, Adrian. And I'm also curious, both Tane and yourself, to answer this question here. That's some really, really sound advice and really a lovely chat there. But my curiosity around this is, again, for both Tane and Adrian, is this is great advice, but when you're in the moment, and you're in the moment of the depths of the mental health, whichever way it's going, what stops someone from asking? You know, it all sounds logical, it all sounds good, but in that moment, I'd love to know what might be the reason we don't have that conversation. Yeah, just open to either of you, because I know you've both gone through this here.
If you want me to start, because I have dealt with a lot of students as well and people around me with these kind of situations, there is no way. To be honest, I called it the darkness in the past. I called it you're in a moment of you're just thinking about yourself and you're not thinking about things around you. You're thinking about a key thing that's happened, and depending on how you deal with it afterwards or in the moment, it's very difficult for yourself to understand sometimes, because you could be the best day and then something happens and it could turn into the worst day. It's a question that is very hard to answer from a personal point of view, because what for me is I've moved beyond that. I've got tattoos to help me forget that past bit, because I don't want to get my mindset back into that position again, if I'm honest. And if we're talking about looking at people coming along, yes, sometimes I can tell someone that's in distress and things, because I think with my knowledge of working with different people, you pick up on things and you can notice body language, you can notice situations, especially things I've had to deal with safeguarding around in my career and stuff, and I can see people in those moments and where I've had to step in and help out or speak to a safeguarding officer and stuff divert the people that way to eventually help them, give them help. Or, as I said before, my philosophy is always people before rugby. It's just getting people to have a chat down there. If you notice that someone's maybe not acting the right way in their normal place, sometimes try and get them to sit down, choose a place to go, they're comfortable, and go and have a drink, and just see if you can have a chat. But sometimes, if I'm very honest, you're not gonna know what to do in that situation. If you're alone, sat in your room, and you're struggling, you're on a free. You could be in the flight, freeze, or flight mode. There's 3 different key things there, and unless you make that obvious choice of what you want to do in that space, you're in that space, and it's hard to get out of it. Personally, and for seeing other people who I've worked with to help them get out of that situation live in the moment, it's very difficult, but you can get there if they talk. You can reach an area and an understanding. But at the end of the day, like, I'm a mental health first aider. At the end of the day, I haven't got all the knowledge. I will get them to some point, but then I will push them on towards the proper channels, for example, and things like that. And I've done work with charities in the UK around mental health and how to reach people that don't believe in it, for example, how to reach out to younger people to talk about it and things. It's a very interesting question which you've opened up there, because a lot of people will take it differently in different ways. But sometimes, unfortunately, you can't stop it in that moment. And that unfortunately leads to some terrible things that have happened. And it's I still think about some of the things that I when I was younger, not me personally, but what happened to people around me. I think now there's nothing I could have done. That person looked absolutely fine the week before training, and then I find out the next day that person's gone. There's nothing I could have done, and that's what I had to tell myself. Even though I was in a situation where nobody else spoke English, couldn't really speak to the bosses about it because of time difference. So I just had to go, right, there's nothing I can do about this. I don't know the parents. I obviously knew the friends. I dealt with them. We just carried on the way we did, and that was the situation. There was nothing more I could do. I couldn't hate myself for it. I couldn't go, right, if I'd done something different. No, I didn't have control. And that's the kind of the biggest thing I would probably say, putting all of what I said together. Sorry, I'm a bit of a chatterbox at times. Is people in that moment will box themselves off. But if you can break through those barriers in that moment, if they're not alone, get them open, get them there, and just let them know that they can be there. But there's so many different diverse people out there. It's going to be different for every single person, and I can't say that out of everyone I've met in my life in different ways and different mental health issues, I personally would never know how to get them out of that moment, or actually say to them, what do you feel in that moment, because it could trigger them, if that makes sense. For me, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm very open. But other people might find that very quite triggering because they don't want to go back to that place and remind them of the most difficult times. So I think there's a bit of a balance that we need to take there to look at what person is actually quite open, what person is quite not, and then where's that middle ground moving forward. So I think I'll stop there and let Tony speak a bit.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. I'd love your perspective, Tony.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it's more around the perception of opening up. I think a lot of people obviously see it as a weakness, or they feel not quite sure of how to open up or what to open up about, without spilling everything. They think that it has to be a massive conversation and everything's going to be fixed. But I think, yeah, realizing that it's an ongoing journey, but also that you don't have to internalize everything. But also, I think sometimes when opening up, people can feel like they're a burden to others, that they're offloading problems, but it's not it's not an offloading of problems. It's actually just allowing yourself to have a channel to be able to speak and tell people how things are happening. And even if that person that you're talking to doesn't give you the answers back, and a lot of the times they won't, it's an opportunity for you to go, oh, yeah, I can actually see what I'm struggling with. So I think sometimes it's actually not necessarily about getting something out of the person you're talking to, but it's actually just having a space to acknowledge the feelings that you're going through. And I think often and probably especially with young people, is we don't know how to articulate ourselves and we don't know what the problem is until we start discussing it. So it's having that understanding that something might be sitting with you that you haven't actually acknowledged for whatever reason. Yeah, and just having that understanding that once you have acknowledged it, you can start delving deeper and understanding why that struggle is there for you.
Yeah, I love both your perspectives because as you both said, in the moment, in your words, Adrian, in the darkness, it's really hard to find the light. And Tanya, like you said, even though you know what the light switch is, turning on the light switch feels like a burden in that particular moment. And I always think about this because I love a saying that Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson, one of the boxers said, like, everyone is a boxer until they get their first punch. Because it's easy for everyone outside of the ring to say stuff, but once you're in the ring, it becomes a very, very different story. So thank you both for those perspectives there. Adrian, I'm going to shift focus just a little bit, and I'd love for you to maybe talk about some of the highs or the amazingness that you've had in your rugby career that are just outstanding moments for you.
I think every moment that you have in life where it's different to your normal everyday thing is you've got to live for life. At the end of the day, there's something powerful in everything you do. I think there's something I was mentioning to someone the other day because like I said, we were recently in Brazil for a family thing, and I just remember going, because obviously it's the first time the Olympics came back in Rio 2016. I was the rugby development officer there for the program in that time. I was working in favelas pretty much all the time. And we had an opportunity, the national TV, I think it was the national TV program, they wanted to do a interview of what rugby was, how do we play the game, and one of the partners, they contacted one of the easier favelas that I worked with. We got transport and we headed up to the official Olympic pitch, which is actually there on military base. So it was quite interesting. And we walked into a building site, and there's people looking at us going, "Oh my God, they shouldn't be here," etc., etc. But it's Brazil; it all gets a bit confused at times. But then you walked into this beautifully green, everything's ready, it's not long until everything starts, and some of these kids have never seen grass before. They're like, some of them are 8, some are even younger or older, and they're looking at this grass. And we played touch for a bit on it, and they just loved it, even though they live 2 blocks away from the Copacabana beach and live up a steep hill. But seeing those kids and the wonder of seeing grass and be able to play touch and play in a field of grass, which a lot of us just have in the garden, for example. But to see these kids seeing that moment and enjoying that time, and we're probably the first people that actually even played on that rugby pitch before the official athletes, if I'm very honest, because it was still being built for the Olympics. That joy in their eyes and what they talked about afterwards in the interview was everything for me. That was probably one of my highest things that's ever been for me in terms of just seeing pure joy in a person's eyes and being able to see something different than what they've used to in their life. That was really, really, really cool, and I think that will stick with me for a long time. There's a lot of good moments, I'm not going to lie, it's been a very long career, but that one has always been a standout. And sorry, what was the other one?
Oh, that was it. Was just what is in your rugby career? What are some of the biggest highlights? But I think you've just shared at the moment. It's not actually about the rugby career. It's about the moment of what we take for granted. myself and Tane, we live in New Zealand. There's grass everywhere. We see it all the time, and it's interesting with the story you shared, that the perspective shift of I just live down the road, but I actually don't go there. And again, it goes back to that whole identity thing. Like, what stops people from going to the Coconut Beach? What is the story they tell themselves that they shouldn't go there or they can't go there? So I love that your highlights are not actually about the rugby career, but about the people that were impacted during your journey.
I think when you said you made like the hardest thing in the rugby career is
sorry, the highlights. Your highlights. We're just focusing on highlights.
Oh, highlights. Sorry. If I give you a bit of a different kind of highlight for me, let's say, so that's kind of like a group moment. Let's say let's look at it from a different kind of situation. So that for me was a big moment, not in rugby but in life as well, and that's always stuck with me. I love that image of us sat on the grass being interviewed by the global team. As an individual, I think that one of the highest moments for me, again, this is not for me, this is seeing other people, is we were teaching a kind of like a life skills program with these kids at a local school, and basically we kind of realised that the school had chosen them because they didn't have very good social skills. They were struggling to bond with people. And it was like a 10-week program. And by the time we got to there, we kind of realised that they kind of clamped onto me as their, like, how can I say, I'm their good part of the week. I'm the safe part. They know they're going to have fun with me. And so I went to my boss and I said, look, we need to change this a little bit because they're relying on me in this situation. And they each had an activity workbook because the program was 10 weeks long, and we added on another 4 weeks. And basically, instead of using me, we slowly kind of stepped out of the program by turning that book, which is all the ideas, everything that we've done together, because we played sport at the same time. We talked about social skills and all that kind of thing. And then we said, well, let's turn that book into a wardrobe of knowledge. And you can wear whatever shirt or T-shirt, whatever kind of clothing you want to do. You've got all these different pages. And why don't we change to open it? Let's lock it so you know you've got it. It's there in your backpack. It's there with you. You keep it in your tray wherever you want to, but you've always got to unlock it every time you want to look in it, because you want to know what you want to wear. And the key, I'm going to call the key my name, Adrian, so you don't forget how we work together. And we kind of slowly started to pull out within those 4 weeks, and we got to the end, and I was given a bunch of cards from the kids, and I was just reading one of them, and it's one I've still got. And funnily enough, I found it the other day, and she said to me, "Thank you for everything you did. I've now joined the volleyball team. I've made some new friends and things." And I was just like, boom, we've done it. And then we also had it was also put into one of the programs for one of the games, and there's a quote from one of the teacher assistants that helped me for it, because this was my time with Harlequins and the foundation and this program. And it was such a powerful little message, and I kind of just went, job done. But job done and acknowledged by the kids and the assistant who would actually see them in a much bigger area than me. I saw them for an hour on a Wednesday, potentially. I don't know what's going on the rest of the week, but to see them grow from that to 14 weeks, and all of them pass on a little bit of lesson to me. And then when I turned up a year later, they were so friendly with other people, they didn't even want to acknowledge me. They didn't even want to say hello. Some of them did, of course, but they were so confident in themselves. And I just realised, well, that's a key win. We won there. We won that battle for them. And here was the next group. Sadly, obviously, that I can't remember what happened with that group, if I'm very honest with you, but that key group that we worked with before, what we got out of them and what they managed to achieve themselves and learn was a fantastic thing for me as being the lead coach and using rugby and other things around the mindset and how we talk and listen to each other and things like that. It was using those values as well. And then if we go on to like a team celebration thing, there was a team I coached for quite a few years ago now. Under 18s Colts. We basically had not many people in the team. We weren't a big club. We weren't anywhere. We were put into the bottom league for the Colts age because it was just after the pandemic actually, and they just classified people through the size of the club basically, and we only had a certain number of players. We had quite good players. They'd gone through quite a difficult season the year before. A lot of players had dropped off because of a lack of good training. I joined the club because I was just looking for something to do away from home, if that makes sense. It's kind of something you did when working with rugby. Depending where I was based, I'd try and find a club to work in the evening just to carry on doing some stuff in my own time to self-develop me. And I took on this team, and I had one kid, he loved to play tennis, and we only trained once a week and played on Sundays. And he used to say to me, Thursdays is my one tennis night, and I want to be a tennis coach. So I said, well, are you free Sundays? And he's like, yeah. I said, well, why? Yeah, you go play tennis on Thursday and do your coaching badge. I've got no problem. As long as you read the game plan and you stay in contact with us, and if you can on the odd Thursday, please come along. Because what's the most important thing is, as I mentioned earlier, it's the person. So I need to keep him interested. I've also got to give him that acknowledgement that I know he's interested in something else, and he's got the freedom to go, yeah, go play that other thing. Go do what you want to do. Because I want that for you as well. And that's really, really important, because rugby is a sport. Yeah, we enjoyed playing that year, but also we've got to recognise that side of it as well. These kids, these players, some of these were adults because they're Colts, and some of them turning 18 quite quickly. They're young adults. We need to think about and how to work with them. Anyway, just to kind of move it on a little bit, is we went through the first bottom league teams, and people, we beat people, we drew, we played. Some of them were walkovers and things, and we actually turned out to be quite a very good side. Unfortunately, we just didn't have much in reserve, so a lot of the boys had to play quite a lot. And we got to the end of one part of the season, and they changed everything up. And I said to the boys, like, look, they seem what we're capable of now, and I said, right, I want you to choose now what kind of league you want us to be in, because it was A, B, C, D, E, if I remember rightly. And I think I gave them the option of, I think it was C or D. I said, do you want to be D and just to be a little bit comfortable and potentially see where we go, or do you want to go C and push yourselves? Because at the end of the day, they're playing the game. I'm not. I want to know what they want to do. And they said C. And we had 4 games to play. They lost every single one, apart from one on the Isle of Wight. But they weren't losses. They were just so close, you wouldn't actually have realised without certain things happening in the game, it could have gone either way. And those kids were not kids, pretty much adults, teenagers. They were walking off that pitch happy, even though they'd lost. Yes, obviously they weren't the ecstatic about losing, but they knew they had fought for it. They knew I was there, I cared about it. They knew that I was looking out for what they wanted to do. Because they're on the pitch, as I said to them, I'm not. If you make the wrong decision, go with it. And your teammate's full of it. Because if you decide to do that, we've got to go with the flow. There's no point. You make an error, we'll fix it later. But go with it in that moment. Don't shut anyone down, just go with that moment and move on. And I tend to just not say anything apart from passing on the odd message at half time and things. Because kind of to kind of wrap up this bit of being the team structure of things. That year was fantastic because we built a team of young lads. They all got to be good friends. We had some bad times, we had some good times, but most of it was brilliant. And these kids went out there. We were the first ever actual cult team in the whole country. I found out that had paid the money to go to the Isle of Wight, because it's quite expensive from the mainland to there and back, in 5 years. Unfortunately for them, we won. They did have about 40 kids on the bench though, so it was a bit interesting for us. We only had about 18 players, but obviously all of them had jumped on the island because no one would go to the Isle of Wight and play them. But it was a good fun match. They kept on putting fresh players out. I had no problem at all. We were playing on a slanted hill, and it was close. I think it finished 52-51. But the laughs and the things, everything, the thankfulness that the lads said from the Isle of Wight, saying thanks for coming over and stuff, and the coaches as well, was just brilliant. And I think that's probably a really good high for me as well, because we went through a season where we weren't top of anything, but the kids went ahead with it. They wanted to do it, and they enjoyed it, and they enjoyed losing. And who can say that very often? But they knew they'd done a job and got it through. I'm not taking any what's the word? It's got nothing to do with me. They're out there. I was just helping them, guiding them along the way. They're the ones that put their hearts out there. I just said some things and they moved them on in games, and I did. They built their back plays, they built their front plays. I allowed them to build themselves into that team, and we finished with a good, decent team. And if that team, unfortunately, it kind of fell apart the year afterwards because there was a bit of confusion with the next lot coming up, not being as skilled potentially as they were. And unfortunately, the team did fall apart and the players moved on. Because I'd been moved on as well, not completely out of my control, old boy rugby stuff, if I'm very honest with you. It was still a highlight of a great year to know that those lads got out there and they played their hearts out. They lost, but they didn't care. They enjoyed their game. They enjoyed what we were doing, and they were there for that. And they'd turn up to do that. And they knew that I cared, if that makes sense. I think it's probably the best way to finish that.
Yeah, that does, and I think what I'm noticing from both your highlights and what you've just shared is that the something that we forget to do as adults, and that's just having fun. Just doing things because you want to have fun. And I will bring Tane back into this because Tane obviously works in space here, and sometimes we are so ingrained into I need to win, I need to do the best that I can, that we forget about having fun along the way. And from what you're sharing, it sounds like they're just having a great time. It doesn't matter if they're lost, but the whole fun aspect. Tanya, what's your thoughts on having fun and having a good time?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. With the teams that I've had, creating a positive environment, a fun environment where, it's much bigger than the sport itself. I think sometimes obviously you want to get results and that's cool, but I think, there's bigger parts at play and sometimes we forget that. So it's important to incorporate fun within training sessions, within games, so that as a positive experience. I reflect on my time through intermediate and high school with playing and just having an incredible time. We didn't always necessarily get the results, but there was a reason we come back, and I guess on reflection it was around that team morality, that positive nature, that being involved in a team and just having fun with your mates. And I think increasingly we've probably seen in the last 5 or so years, there's more people trying to be in it for results, and that's cool. We've all got different reasons for being in sport, but I think sometimes I think a lot of the time actually we forget that at the end of the day we're just there to have fun. We're there to enjoy being in the sport, and particularly with youth sport. I think sometimes there's too much emphasis on competition and getting results instead of actually enjoying the process and wanting to be within sport or doing physical activity for the long term, not just a small space and time.
And I love that from both of you, because it's about the moment in time. Like it's Shidra at the start time, like it's all time just keeps moving, and if we don't have fun in that time, then are we actually living life?
Charles, do you mind if I just jump in quickly, because I've just remembered a moment.
Totally.
It's actually just popped into my head because she just made her debut recently. So a few years ago, I was coaching. So I was doing some work as part of the Harlequins Foundation, which was to bring more girls into the game, and I was in one of the counties down towards the south, Sussex. It's about an hour and a half away from my place, and we had Horsham Rugby Club and all girls school around the corner from them, and we had to reach out a little bit further because we covered a lot of the area. And I did my 6 weeks there. We had touch after school and everything. And then I realised, the club's around the corner. And I got involved with the club and ended up being their under-18 coach for a while. And a lot of the girls that I'd worked with at the school were part of that team. And to be honest, this is not about them. This is actually about someone else. And one day I'm just coaching them. It was quite a cold night, if I remember rightly. There wasn't too many people. And they were out in the grass. They were doing something. And this lady and gentleman and a young girl turned up. And I went over to talk to them. I said, guys, can you just look after the girls quickly? And they said, we've come down here to trial and see what Horsham's like, because at our rugby club, we haven't got enough girls for their little daughter, obviously, to carry on. And I was like, well, there's only us tonight, I'm afraid. There is no under 13s or anybody around. There's no one I can call, unfortunately, to say. But what I'm willing to do is, obviously, the girls are older. We'll put her in a bib and we'll make sure that, because we're not playing a contact game, we'll play touch. And they've got to be careful with her. She rang absolute rings around these under-18 girls. She ripped them apart. I kid you not. Even to this day, she was an under-13 and she had the skills to rip apart that 18. Whatever side she was on, I think it was 7 versus 7, not in quite a reasonably big space. She took the space, she went, she was stepping, she was all over the place. And it's still one of my strongest moments in terms of women's rugby and girls rugby, because that young girl has recently made her debut in Ireland for the England under-18 team. And then she just recently played in the England Six Nations festival held at Wellington College, which is quite close to where I live. And to be able to see that memory in your mind, and then this grown-up girl playing for England. There's other players that I've known that have got on, but to have that knowledge of her back as a little one, destroying an under-18 team, and then becoming one of the leaders at this festival, because unfortunately I could only be there for one game, was such a great feeling that has happened and transitioned. Because maybe if I hadn't been there that night, for example, or they hadn't popped down on the right night, who knows what could have happened. But maybe the stars aligned there and they went forward. And I've always supported it. I've always been behind there, but they're a bit too far away at times. I had to change due to my own health reasons to move back towards clubs closer to home. But all the clubs' memories in terms of women's rugby, I'll always remember that. Her running rings around under-18 girls, twice the size of her, with a lot more skills and understanding of the game. And she's out there playing, and then, wow, seeing her out there playing for England was amazing. It was such a feeling of, I'm so glad she got there, with pretty much a town on the back of that. Her parents are so supportive, her family, the rugby club, her original rugby club, and everyone around her, everyone. She's just fantastic. And it was just great to see that future come from seeing an under 13, seeing her on the other occasion, and really just following through her social media to actually then see her play an international game. It was fantastic. Sorry to break it up a little bit there. I just wanted to add that in. Sorry.
No worries. And who is this mystery 13-year-old that has done this? What's the name?
So this is Evie Collingbourne.
Awesome. Shout out to Evie Collingbourne for what she's achieved.
Yeah, look out for her. Yeah, I'm not going to say much more because I know what she's doing in the future. But yeah, no, Evie Collingbourne is the one to look for.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adrian. I think that was a great value add there, and I think this resonates to both Tanya and myself in the work that we do with young people. And also, you know, what you do, Adrian, is we don't do it for us, we do it for the young person in that moment in time. And I think we've learned not to take credit for any of that there, because you just, as you said before, you just stay in that moment in time when this has happened, and then whatever happens next is you were a tiny catalyst in the bigger picture of anyone's, and this is for anyone in life, right? Everything happens for a reason, whether it's a young person or an old person. You know, at the start, Adrian, I shared with you the premise of this podcast, and that just happened because one day Tanya and myself had the conversation at that particular time. And if Tanya had not seen that young person crying that day there, I don't know if this would have happened, because it was just a moment in time when this has happened. So I think if we reflect back on not just young people, but anything we do in life happens for a reason, and we don't know at that moment why, but always hindsight is amazing. And it's not always a good thing. It's just a thing. It could be good, it could be bad, but it's just a thing that happens.
Yeah, 100%.
Adrian, we have been speaking for almost an hour, and you have shared some amazing things, and I'm sure we can talk for a long time, but I'm mindful of your time as well, and we'd love to ask you one final question for today's podcast. I'm sure we'll have you back again to share some more of your amazing wisdom, but our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge, and we invite all our guests to share a piece of knowledge to put into a basket that we think myself, Tanya, or listeners could get a bit out of. Would love you to share something from your worldview.
I think my basket of knowledge for me would be, and this kind of comes from people that are finding it quite annoying about me, especially my wife, is I will chat to anyone about anything. I could be sat on a park bench, I could be sat on a train, and I could start a conversation, and I will sit there and chat to them about anything they want. It's sometimes like, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about what they're talking about, and it's just fantastic to learn some people's stories and what they're doing just by, you're in a waiting room, there's nothing to do. I'm not really the kind of person who likes to look on their phone and do stuff. I'm a bit of I don't really like to sit still, if I'm honest. I quite would rather be up and about. But I'm a chatterbox. I'll sit there chatting to people on the phone or on the these situations like today in this podcast, because I'm generally interested. I'm generally just want to sit there and go, that's pretty cool. Tell me more about this. And things, and then they ask you questions back, and you're in a full-going conversation. I think it was probably, I think my wife kind of said recently, she said, do you know what? She says, well, sorry, I think we were going out somewhere and someone invited us. He said, look, I'm just going to chuck Adrian in the corner. He'll chat to anyone, so we won't have to worry about him. So we can get on with this. And he'll be fine on his own. So just leave him there. He'll just go and chat to anyone. And I think that is a very good skill to have, and be able to adapt to other people, because people are all different shapes and sizes. They all have their own different beliefs and things. But at the end of the day, I just see a human in front of me. And if I see something interesting and can start a conversation, or they're talking about something I've overheard, and I can help, or sorry, if you don't mind, I'll maybe this will help. And then it starts a whole conversation, and then you're learning something about somebody completely different. And I think that's something fantastic that we can do every day with how many people are in the world. Everyone has a different story, a different line. It could be the worst thing, it could be the best thing, but it's a story at the end of the day that is also a teaching point for you, or it could be something fun, it could be anything. I'll give you a situation today. Very simple. We were waiting in the line for me to pick up my meds for painkillers, and a woman was asking about dressings and stuff. She had a bit of a wound on her arm, and she was picking I knew they were light from doing first aid, obviously, with rugby. I said, no, don't grab that one if you don't mind me excusing. Grab these ones because they'll stick on a bit more. Grab this tape because if it's going to be there for a while and you want to keep it there, tape it up like this, etc., etc. And that was only a 3-minute conversation. And she was like, oh, thanks very much for that. I appreciate that. I didn't need to step in and do that. I was just waiting in queue to do my own thing. But no, because I'm there to help people, and I thought, well, my knowledge could help out here. Why not? So I said, oh, if you don't mind, I think this will help, and go from there. So you never know. So go out there, chat to people. It doesn't matter what they look like. Enjoy it. Have fun with it. Because you never know what you're going to learn or get to know.
I love that. I love that that piece of knowledge to share, that, don't be afraid to chat to people, because everyone's got a story, and everyone wants to share, whether it's a lot or a little bit. I love that's a great skill to have. Tane, any last questions, comments, words?
So just thanks, Adrian, for jumping on the podcast. It's been awesome to finally get you on and to hear about what you're achieving, what you're doing, and just, I guess, hear a snippet of the amazing work that you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, Adrian. Any last words before we end the podcast?
No, I was just going to say thanks for having me on. Hopefully, I can pop on again at some time. Hopefully at a better time for yourselves, knowing how early it is for yourselves. We're still on a Friday. I know you're on a Saturday. But thank you for bringing me here. It's been a fantastic thing. I'd definitely endorse this podcast to anyone. This opportunity to hear, as you said, I think number 198 person to be on today. Wow, that's 198 different stories. That's a fantastic way. That's a fantastic. I think how many baskets of knowledge that is. Yeah, you can't find that very many places. So I think, thank you for having me on, and thank you for allowing me to share part of me, and hopefully it will help some people moving forward. And I think you guys are doing a great thing. So thank you for doing this.
No worries, thank you. And like Hannah said, we've just heard a tiny snippet of your life story, and I think there's a lot more to share. But in what you shared in the last hour, there's a lot for us to take away, a lot for myself to reflect on the way I live my life. So thank you so much for your time. For listeners out there, hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast. If you have not enjoyed it, it's because you've fallen asleep. Go back and listen again, because I'm sure that you'll find something that is going to resonate with you. Until next time, don't forget to find a reason to smile every day. Don't forget to put something into your basket of knowledge. And like Adrian said, don't forget to be brave and just have a chat with anyone, because everyone's got a story to share. Till next time, ka kite, bye everybody. Peace.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.